My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. On today's podcast, we have Katherine McNamara, who plays Abby Walker in the Walker prequel called Walker Independence, airing on the CW. It follows Abby Walker, who is an affluent and tough-minded Bostonian whose husband is murdered before her eyes while on their journey out west. So to talk about what fans can expect this upcoming season, what it's like filming in a time period, and yes, to answer that question about that tartan that is shown in the promo photo, here is Katherine McNamara. I want to ask you kind of initially, what drew you into playing Abby? And are you impressed that for the time period that she's such a strong woman? Because we normally don't really get to see that in a period piece.
Yeah, and that's initially what drew me to Abby is when I first read the pilot, it struck me how, she's a woman sort of out of time. And she's very educated. She's, a teacher and an artist and a piano player and all of these things. And suddenly she's, thrust into a situation where her entire life burns up in front of her in the first 15 minutes. And instead of becoming a victim of her circumstance, she chooses to grow from it and move on and create her own life, which we very rarely get to see from women in that time.
Yeah, it was really exciting to see someone that took charge, you know? And even
Mhm.
when her character comes across, obviously Hoyt, who we all love Matt Barr, but when you guys come across each other, it's just so funny because you just go toe to toe. And it was just
Yeah.
so refreshing. And I felt like this pilot in particular was so different.
What I love too about the Hoyt and Abby relationship is that, there are two characters that are both fighting for what they believe to be justice and loyalty and what is right, and yet they come at it from very different perspectives and very different moral compasses, and they tend to push each other's buttons in a lot of ways. But by in doing so, they each grow from it in different ways, and it's really fascinating to see them confront sides of each other that they otherwise wouldn't have needed to.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed too that even for Hoyt, when you guys are having conversations, he doesn't treat you like I feel like he would treat another woman for some reason. There's some sort of kindred spirits between the two of
Mhm.
you that you guys relate on. I think you both can see tragedy within each other for some reason. So I think you guys are drawn to each other. And
Yeah.
I love how it first happens in kind of a funny way that you kind of crossing each other. But then ultimately, you're going to move forward on a trek together for justice.
Absolutely.
So your character says something that I thought was very interesting. And you're not doing it for revenge, you're doing it for justice. And it's one of the last sentences that kind of airs in the episode. And
Mm.
why do you think it's important to emphasize that this is not like a vengeful, angry type of attack, that this is a justice movement for her?
It depends. That's where she starts for sure. But as we move forward in the story, as we all know about, well, then one of the things we all love most about Westerns is that justice is sort of undefined and it's never clean cut. It's always a bit messy in the West. And it'll be interesting to see a woman who has such a strong moral compass have to make choices and have to make sacrifices and really decide how far she will go in order to get this justice.
And when you read the script, how do you prepare as an actress when you find out that you're playing a character where your husband gets murdered, and then now you're in a town that you're going to be seeing the murderer? And obviously,
Yeah.
we see her make kind of crazy decisions at the beginning, but the fact that you have to rationalize in your brain, how would I deal with this? How would
Yeah.
I react seeing this? What is the long game? How do I play this out? So, how do you prep for that when you read kind of where you're going?
I mean, first of all, I don't know much about where I'm going. That's kind of the interesting thing about working on a television series like this, especially one that's not based on comics or books or anything like that. You really don't know what they're going to do, and the writers are, of course, very tight-lipped and don't share too much as I ask and as much as I beg. So a lot of it, as I get each episode, I learn as well. But what's interesting is that grief is grief, and it's such a human process that I think all of us can relate to on a certain level, and it is something that is utterly universal. And, in no matter to what extent, everyone has felt that, everyone has been through that, everyone has lost someone or something in their life. And it's a story that can be so inspiring because you get to see this woman overcome her worst fears and everything she thought would never happen, and have her life entirely change course and go, okay, that was my life. This is my life now. And the only thing I can do is move forward. And, it becomes a really interesting allegory, but it's, it's becoming, the more we get into the show, it's becoming a bit of an allegory for our world today. Coming out of the pandemic, our world is on a similar precipice to the West in a sense. All these people have come to independence for a chance to start over and a chance to reclaim their lives and to create the world in which they want to live. And getting to watch all of these characters do that in an environment that is such a microcosm of a small unincorporated town in Texas in the late 1800s, it really makes you think about our world today and the choices that each of us makes as we are navigating this new world that we're living in.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good comparison to it because it is true. Because so much of us want a fresh start or want to do something, or, even like with the pandemic, like you said, we wanted to like get out and be free. And it's almost like you forget about your freedom. So to have a show like this where there aren't some rights for some of the women and there aren't certain things that you kind of take for granted, it's almost like reminding you and reiterating, like, we all went through something together, but look at
Mhm.
all of the positives that came out of it and that we can still kind of gain from it, especially when comparing it to a show like this.
Well, and that's exactly what you see in Independence, is you see a group of people who are trying to form a community, who are trying to figure out who they can trust, who they can rely on, and how to build a world together, or how to fight for what they want on their own. And it just depends, and you get to see this sort of ebb and flow of these people that are trying to navigate a world that has no rules. And it's interesting. It's very telling as you see these characters make choices.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, like, what some of, like, the fun scenes for you were, because obviously this is very different for you in terms of I've seen you in leather, I've seen you, like, with, like, arrows and fighting and all the kind of different, shows, and I've watched you for a very long time, I've interviewed you for a very long time. This is very different, and you do such a good job. The way you talk is very different, the way you stand is very different. You're in very different outfits, which I'm sure are not comfortable. So, like, how is it for you in this role, kind of handling all of that? What's your favorite thing, your least favorite thing, kind of becoming her?
It's a blast. I mean, it's why I do what I do. I get the opportunity to explore a million different lifestyles and a million different time periods. So much of it is about the physicality of the character as well, and being immersed in the world. And that's, I think, my favorite part about Walker Independence. Aside from the people who, I mean, our cast, our crew, everyone is incredibly lovely. But it's getting to come to work every day and step into a world. We have our town where most of the sets are practical, where we can walk into and out of buildings, and we're in, our costume designer Marion Toy has created these costumes, and her team is amazing. That it's this blend of vintage pieces and pieces that they've made, but it's as historically accurate as possible. So, when you put on the corset every day, and when you put on the boots, and you put on all these things and these layers and layers and layers of dress, it really changes the way you interact with the space around you, and move throughout that space, and it does shape who the character is. And it's very interesting, and it's what I love. Whether I'm in a super suit all day long that feels like I'm wrapped in a resistance band, or a 20-pound dress and a corset trying to jump on and off a horse. It's part
Right.
of the job, and that's the fun challenge of it all.
I have to ask you, this is like the weirdest question, but it's been like floating on the internet, a rumor about your tartan. Have you heard about this? So I have to
Yeah, yeah,
ask
yeah.
it. But in
Okay.
the promotional photos, right, in the first episode we see it, everyone's like, "Oh my
Yep.
god, it's the Fraser tartan from Outlander. She knows Sam." Is that so? Let's just put the rule. No one, I don't know if anyone's asked you, so let's just put it
Yeah.
out.
It
So,
was not my choice at all.
okay.
It was a very hysterical coincidence. I think our showrunners descended from the Mackenzie family, and so
Oh,
he like, or his mom or his grandmother or something is a Mackenzie. So as an homage to his family, he wanted to put in the Mackenzie plaid into the show. And given that Abby is from Boston and, seems relatively of that descent,
yeah.
physically, given the red hair, etc.,
Yeah.
they decided to include it as the one thing that, Abby has when the wagon burns up, is her dress and her Mackenzie tartan. And that just happened to be when the promotional photos came out. I can't tell you how many tweets. I got a text from Sam being like, "Oh, did you steal my tartan?" Like, yes, I did. I'm sorry. Maybe now that the Frasers are in America, we can somehow meet somewhere in the middle
I
and
know you
do a
guys should do like a
crossover. I
really
don't
cool
know.
crossover. That would be amazing. Which of Sam on, and all of a sudden you're like, "What are you doing here?"
Exactly,
It was
exactly.
so funny because, like, it literally everybody was talking about it, and I was going, "I didn't even know
Yeah,
that," like, I'm, like, paying attention, I'm watching it differently because 'cause I'm, like, critiquing
right,
and watching everything, but it was just
right.
so funny, and it was asked so many times, and I'm going, "I don't know if she got asked it," so I guess you got asked it a million times, but I guess the pro of it is that it's really cool to hear that story, that it kind of
Yeah.
very important to them and kind of ran through their family, and it's a nice homage to them, so, like, that's really nice to have that in there, but I do think it's funny that it's just related to poor Outlander and Sam, and that's funny. But I want to ask you, are we gonna find out a little more about your family? In the first episode, it's mentioned, that your family's not nice people. Obviously, there's things that have happened to you. Are we gonna find out more about that? And then how is the relationship between you, well, I should say Abby, and Hoyt going to grow as the season progresses?
As far as the Abby and Hoyt relationship, it's very interesting because given, that Abby is grieving her husband, there's not necessarily a romantic recourse right away. But what you do see is these two people that are bonded by what they've been through, and these two people that, whether they like it or not, whether they agree or not, are working together because they both want the same thing. And the more we find out about Tom Davidson and what he's planning and his family, it just snowballs from there. In trying to figure out why her husband was murdered, what actually happened that night, Abby's forced to confront her husband's past, why he actually decided to go west in the first place, and also her family and the reasons that she can't go back to Boston, the reasons that she is staying in Independence, and the risks that may or may not exist there. So it'll be interesting to watch her sort of confront her past and her future as she's trying to figure things out in the present.
I wanna make sure I ask you, obviously, everyone loved Walker. When this got announced, people were so excited. So, what are
Mhm.
you excited for fans to see as the season goes on?
I'm excited for people to get to know the characters in town more. That's the beauty of Independence is the members of the town and these characters that are played by some of the most wonderful people I've met in my life. And everyone really put such heart and soul into the show. It's amazing to watch these characters as we get to peel back the layers and find out more and more of why these people are independent and what is driving them as we move forward.
Yeah, and I also want to add in quickly too, what I thought was really great that your show did, and I feel like we're seeing it more now, is the indigenous aspect.
Yeah,
So to have not only like, yeah, they're in the background, or oh no, it's people we're fighting. It's a character that's fully fleshed out, that is a part of the story, that is active, and that it's going to be a part of this season and helping Abby and doing whatever they, comes across. So what was that like for you too? Because this is new,
yeah,
which is shocking. Like, this should not be new. This should not be something we're talking about, but it's new. And
yep,
to have someone on there that's fully fleshed out, living from that community is amazing. What did that mean to you in terms of knowing that there was going to be a character full fledged, native background, and we're
yeah.
repping the indigenous people, which I think is amazing.
It's incredible to see, and the Abby Callian relationship is one of my absolute favorites on the show.
Mhm.
Each one is special in its own way, but there's a bond and there's a warmth and there's a trust that exists between these two that you don't really see in many of the other characters. And Justin Johnson Cortez, who plays Callian, does a beautiful job and commits so much time and energy to making sure everything is done properly and out of respect and celebration for the Apache culture. Even down to, he works with a member of the Apache community to translate things every episode into Apache so that they can make sure it's done in a way that's as accurate as possible. And I just give so much credit to Justin for all the hard work that he puts in, and all of the little Easter eggs and little sprinkles of that we get to throw in, and it really does become a significant part of the season. But and it doesn't stop with Justin. I mean, there's so many incredible people on the show, and so many different people that we get to showcase from different backgrounds and cultures on this show, and it really does present the West in a much more historically accurate way than maybe has been done before, or at least that's our hope and it's our goal.
I guess I'll just end with my final question, which is just, obviously fans have followed you from show to show. So for fans that don't get to speak with you and that are super excited and just follow you from thing to thing, is there anything that you want to kind of say to them?
Just the biggest thank you. For going from show to show and project to project, it's always such a journey, and it's such a you never know where you're gonna end up next. And the fact that I've been a part of so many fandoms that have such warmth and such love and such passion for the stories that we're telling. That's all I could ever ask for as an artist and as a storyteller. And, just the fact that folks are excited about the stories that I'm having a part in telling and excited to see what's going on next and to come on this journey with us yet again. It's the biggest gift, and I'm very, very humbled by it, and I have nothing but gratitude. So just thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed listening to Katherine McNamara talk about her character and what fans can expect on this prequel, Walker Independence. It airs Thursdays on the CW, so make sure you check it out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you're updated on all of our latest podcasts, and head over to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe so you're updated on all of our video content.